Next question goes to Congresswoman Woolsey first. Would you support going to war with Iran to deter Iran from using nuclear weapons on Israel?
I believe there are many ways to work with Iran that we have not yet experienced or tried. No, I won't support going to war with any country ever again unless that country is attacking our borders. It is a mistake that will solve nothing if we attack Iran to protect Israel. Israel will be the first nation that they counterattack, and we will then have a full-fledged nuclear war on our hands. We are human beings. We have to learn how to deal with each other differently. We cannot count on bombs and bullets to bring us together and teach us how to live as one, actually. So, no, I would not support a nuclear attack on Iran.
Thank you.
I believe the question was, would you support going to war with Iran, correct? I think it depends on what the conditions are. So to give you a definitive answer is hard for me to do because the question is so open-ended. I think it really depends on the conditions. Do I want another Afghanistan? Not really. Do I want another Vietnam War? Nope. Don't want that. Been there, done that. So it really determines on the conditions before I would vote yes or no.
Thank you. Mr. Ruyle?
No, I think it's important. I would not support any war that our country is likely to fight. I think we need to look back in history and see how many of our wars, even before we had President Bush, our wars were based on lies. So, again, I would not support this. And on the issue of nuclear weapons, I think we need to think about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. We signed that as a nation about 20 years ago, I think. And according to that treaty, the non-nuclear nations agreed to give up nuclear weapons, and in return, the nuclear weapon countries, including the United States, promised to enter in good faith on a treaty on ending nuclear weapons and on general and complete disarmament. This is the treaty the United States signed to begin good faith efforts towards nuclear and general disarmament. And we are not, there's a real legal meaning to good faith bargaining, and the United States is not doing this. So no, I do not support any attack on Iraq or any other nation by the United States imperialists.
Thank you. Mr. Judd. Mr. Judd, you get the first time to answer the next question. That's what I meant to say. At a time when unemployment is around 10% and underemployment is around a quarter of the workforce, what is Congress's responsibility in holding the line vis-a-vis their own pay and compensation at the expense of the American taxpayers?
Well, I'll use myself as an example. Being in business with the slow economy, what I did as a leader in my business. First thing I did was we went together as a crew down at the company and we talked. And we said, look, we're going through some tough times. And here's how we can save some jobs. And part of saving the jobs is that, yes, we're going to have hourly cutbacks. But the other part of that sacrifice as a leader is I didn't take pay for a while. I lead by example. And leading by example requires sacrifice. That's what we need in Washington. We need leaders. And I will take that to Washington. And I will bring that home to this district. I will lead by example, because that's what this district needs.
Mr. Ruyle.
Yes, again, I don't think whatever salaries Congress gets is the real problem. It's what they don't do in terms of providing jobs. Again, Congress voted what? $800 billion as a giveaway to the bankers. If they took that money, they could have hired every one of the 14 million unemployed workers with full pay and benefits. That would run about $50,000 each. So if they just took that money they gave to the bankers and hired American unemployed workers, that would go a long way towards solving the problems of unemployment in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Ruyle. Councilwoman Woolsey?
Actually, we don't get pay raises, we get cost of living adjustments that are provided every year under existing laws. That cost of living adjustment is less than what the federal employees receive, and we have received those cost of living adjustments 10 times in the 18 years I've been in the House of Representatives. Now, that same cost of living adjustment and what we earn is what judges, all federal judges are paid. So without a cost of living adjustment, you have to ask yourself, who will be able to afford to go to Washington, have 2 residences, 2 cars, 2 wardrobes, 2 of everything, without any adjustment? Nobody. I need you to think about this, because what we are going to have is wealthy people are going to be millionaires will be the only people, that's my opinion. Millionaires will be the only people that will run for the House, run for the Senate. They will not know the real needs of American people, and it will skew the decisions that are made in Congress.
Thank you. The next question goes to Congresswoman Woolsey. The American people are slashing their budgets. What are or will your plans to slash the federal budget and its ginormous growth?
Well, I think I told you that the Congressional Progressive Caucus has put forward our progressive budget, and that budget slashes the cost of defense by ending the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, by cutting all of the Cold War weapons that are still built in this country, and by ensuring that our nuclear defense armament is cut severely. We are suggesting 1,000 nuclear pieces of equipment, and that is way too many in and of itself. We are offering a public auction. We know that will save money all the way around. We are insisting that we roll back the tax breaks for the top 1%, 2% of the wealthiest people in this nation, and that we tax corporations who send their corporations overseas and manufacture overseas.
Thank you. Mr.
Can you
Judd?
repeat the question, please?
Yes. The American people are slashing their budgets. What are or will be your plans to slash the federal budget and its ginormous growth?
Okay. I also want to go back to the last question. Here's a disconnect that we have with our Congress. We have our representative voting herself a raise. We're voting for a raise. So here I am talking about the disconnect. But let's talk about government spending. Government asks us to hold our budget. And this is where we get back to $1 in and $1 out. Do we expect anything less out of our government? But for some reason they expect that they can take $1 in and spend $3 out. And that $3 is being paid by our grandchildren, or by my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and my children. We need responsible government spending. We don't have that right now.
Thank you. Mr. Ruyle?
I think it's important to understand the basic point of the Peace and Freedom Party. As a socialist party, we believe that there needs to be a total transformation from capitalism to socialism. Workers of this country and the world need to organize as a class, take possession of the earth machinery of production, and abolish capitalism. That's the premise from which we begin. So I think a lot of these questions are how to deal and how to manage this capitalist system, which is a system we need to get rid of. Now, specifically, in terms of the federal government at this time, we favor, first of all, ending the war on terror. It's a totally bogus war. We don't need to station troops all over the world. End the war on drugs. It does far more damage to this country than marijuana or any other drug could do. And single-payer health care would save a lot of money in terms of health care.
Thank you. Mr. Judd, this question goes first to you. What is your philosophy in regards to power of individual versus state versus federal? How would you work to achieve that proper role of government?
Well, I live that on a day-to-day life, but our Constitution was set up with this principle. You, the individual, have the power. You have the rights. And then it's family, and then your municipalities, and then your state governments, and your federal governments. But somewhere along the line, that's changed. Now all power is centralized, coming from Washington. And then state, and then municipalities, and then family, and then the individual. So the question is, you folks, as citizens, when are you going to empower yourself? We have the power to do that. It's a question of when. When are you going to reach that threshold? I've reached mine. It's time for us as citizens to take back our government.
Thank you, Mr. Judd. Mr. Ruyle?
Again, as a socialist, I certainly concur that it's time for the people to take control of the government. But the real problem is not the government so much as the corporations that are running the government and the corporations that are running so much of our society. And again, I'll say the workers need to organize and exert their power over both corporations and the government.
Thank you. Congresswoman Woolsey?
Well, there are programs that the federal government and only the federal government can complete and make possible for the people in this country. It's the federal government's responsibility to defend America. It's the federal government's responsibility to provide health care for the poor and set standards for health care for all. It's the federal government's responsibility to ensure that workers have protection, that they have wage and hour laws that keep them safe and fair, and that they know what the rules of the game are. It's the federal government's responsibility to ensure that we have first-time responders, police and fire in all communities, not just communities that are affluent. And it's the federal government's responsibility to level the playing field for education so that not only affluent families can send their children to a good school. So with that, I believe the federal government has a real role, and that role needs to be authorized and supported, and that if it isn't working, then certainly the grassroots is going to stand up and they're going to let me know if they don't like what's happening.
Judd?
First again.
No.
Question,
Did
please.
you respond to that question?
Yes.
Did you?
I was.
Sorry. Then Mr. Ruyle, are you for a single-payer plan for health care, and why is the premium health care cost going up, and what do you want to do about it?
Again, as we said before, the party and I stand for single-payer health care. The reason our health care costs are going up is primarily because of health care for insurance corporations that are, again, making huge profits. Their stock went up after Congress passed this so-called health care reform bill. So we need single-payer health care, and that will reduce health care costs and improve the quality of health care as it is done in every other industrial nation on earth.
Thank you. Congresswoman Woolsey.
As a leader of the progressives in the House of Representatives, it was very, very clear that when we started the debate on health care reform, that 99% of the 83 members that are part of the Progressive Caucus supported a single-payer system. We know that to be what this United States would benefit the most from. But it was clear to us that there would be no single-payer system in the debate from out of the three committees of jurisdiction. So we ensured one thing is that the states on their own can have a single-payer if they choose. That single-payer system can be part of their health care, state by state. California has a single-payer initiative. It's very strong. It should be supported. The public option then was included in the House reform bill that would save the $68 billion a year and would provide the competition that would keep the cost of health care premiums down. You see, if there is no competition for the private insurance providers, their costs can go up and up. They'll be challenged by the federal government, but there will be no way to prove that it can be done much better and much cheaper with the government plan.
Thank you. Mr. Judd.
Well, quite frankly, I want politics out of my health care. I'm concerned about the second-tier effects that are going to be coming down with this health care. I'm concerned about the $500 billion being moved from the Medicare system into this healthcare system. I'm concerned about the shortage of doctors and nurses by putting 30 million people on this healthcare. I'm concerned about the 10 million or so that don't even want it because they feel they're young enough and they can finance their own healthcare. So we need to start over. And I said that earlier. We didn't address what the healthcare costs are through competition, through tort reform, and why can't I buy health insurance across state lines?
Thank you. Congressman Woolsey, this question is for you. If you are elected or re-elected, what do you plan to do in the next term to connect with the voters?
Well, actually, since we receive thousands and thousands of communications every single month that get responded to one-on-one, and since I hold office hours on an ongoing basis where I sit and speak with and get questions and answers from my constituents, and since we mail out a newsletter every year that goes to 318,000 households and costs 26 cents per household. And since when we do telephone town halls, and there are thousands of our constituents on those town halls every single time, and they ask direct questions and they listen to the question and answer, and can then email us if they have an additional question, and we respond to it. I think if there's something that people would say about the Congresswoman, I'm sure one of the things they would say is they know that I'm with them, they know what I think and believe and support, and that I am in step with what their ideas and thoughts are.
Thank you. Mr. Judd.
Well, therein lies why I am here, because I do feel that there's a disconnect between our representation in Washington here in District 6. But what I'm going to take and allow you folks to do is nothing different than what I do in my own personal business. Because I do have an open door policy. I am accessible. But more importantly, I'm proactive. And what do I mean by proactive? I mean, I want to know what the heartbeat is going on down the shop floor. And in this case, I want to know the heartbeat that's going on in Marin and Sonoma counties. I'm going to ask you the questions. I want to hear from you. I want to sit down with you at lunch, or how about dinner, or how about the coffee? And yes, I know there's 400,000 people that you have to deal with, but still we can't. And I do pick the phone up in my office. And even at the campaign office, I pick the phone up on occasion, yes, when I walk by. I will be accessible. And if I'm not, in 2 years, vote me out.
Thank you. Mr. Ruyle.
When I'm elected, I'm assuming it will be because the people of this district want socialism and want me to work towards transforming the society, towards ending the wars in the Middle East, towards building a single-payer healthcare system, and towards reforming our educational system so it provides free and quality education for everybody. So I will attempt to provide leadership in that regard, and I will certainly look to the people of this district for input, understanding, and equal participation in this process. And let me just say one thing about the way Congress works. Because as we know, a large percentage, or probably the majority of Americans, wanted single-payer health care. You may not want it, but a majority of Americans did. But that wasn't even on the table when Congress was considering the health care package. So again, we need leadership from Congress to accomplish the stated goals. And again, my stated goal is to help effect the transition to a more just and sustainable society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruyle. Our next question goes first to you, Mr. Ruyle. As a Congress member, would you vote for an extension of all Bush tax cuts so the economy can recover?
No. The Bush tax plan was unfair. We need to move towards a fair and just taxation system where people who make under $50,000 pay no taxes at all, as our presidential candidate, Ralph Nader, suggested. And for the rich people, it goes back to the rates that were paid during the Eisenhower years, Republican administration. But ultimately, I think when we have socialism, taxes will be abolished along with corporations.
I support repealing the tax cuts for the top 1% to 2% of the wealthiest people in this country. I support robust tax cuts for middle-income workers. I support cutting tax cuts for any overseas manufacturer, and I support keeping our estate tax in place. I do not want to repeal that for the farmers in our district, but I believe that continuing to let the wealthiest people in the country, who are multi-millionaires and billionaires, get millions and millions of tax relief annually, and letting those who are struggling as middle-income people and getting very little tax relief is virtually, I think, it's a sin.
Thank you. Mr. Judd.
We're looking at small businesses struggling right now. And a majority of those individuals that make that $250,000 are small businesses. So right now, to let the Bush tax cuts expire is the wrong thing to do across all tax categories. So no, I would not support it.
Thank you. I want to thank the audience for your interesting questions. We got to, I'm going to ask one last question. with 1 minute answer. I will do that. I want to thank the audience, first of all, though. We got through most of the questions. We have only a very small number that we did not get to. So for the last question, you will have 1 minute to answer it. I want to pose this question. What question would you like the audience to think about when voting? And I believe you're the first one to answer this one.
You're looking straight at
I'm
me,
looking straight at you.
Well, the question becomes, when you go to the voting booth, to mark that check, is to move past the right and the left, to move past the D and the R, and think about your representation on the individual that you're voting for. And who's going to best take your representation to Washington, and who's going to best fight for you here at home. That's what I ask you to do. Think about your empowerment and how you want to be represented in Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Ruyle.
Well, of course, I want people to think peace and freedom. It's very important, I think, that we have minor parties, or I prefer to say independent parties. We have this two-party system, which again, we need to get out of the two-party box. So if you don't vote peace and freedom, I hope you consider voting libertarian. Thank you.
Mr. Congresswoman Woolsey.
I would hope that the voters, as they enter when they're filling out their ballot at home here at the ballot box, would question and evaluate the performance of my office and of being as your representative, knowing that you are our bosses, you are the people we work for, you are our employers, and you will know whether or not we have met your needs, in nationwide, in Congress, when we talk about what's going on in this country and this world, and right here at home, when we talk about our marine sanctuaries that we want to put in place, getting smart rail going, and making sure Highway 101 works, and the completion of the wetlands that we've been so involved with.
Would you please accept one more question?
No, we do not have time. We will now move to closing statements. And in the reverse order of opening statements, I will ask Mr. Judd to take 2 minutes to complete his closing remarks.
Thank you. This election is about jobs, the economy, and uncontrolled government spending. America needs to create new jobs for the 21st century with commitments of integrity for both public and private sector leaders. To do this, government must facilitate creating an environment that revitalizes the entrepreneurial spirit by encouraging new visions in agricultural, energies, biotechnologies, engineering, and manufacturing. I am that catalyst to bring together both private and government leaders here in Sonoma and Marin counties. Together, we can forge a new economic atmosphere to sustain the long-term jobs with respect to both human resources and our environment. I will be that ambassador who promotes the riches of our unique area here in Marin and Sonoma counties. This is the leadership I bring to you, the future, bridging the difference and moving forward. I challenge you to look past the right and the left, the D and the R. I'm an independent thinker who has the strength and experience to make the hard decisions required for responsible government spending. You see, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, no matter how emotional you are on the issues, we must come together to save what we've worked hard for. Right. With $1.4 trillion in deficit spending this year alone, supported by the incumbent, we can no longer afford business as usual. And we can no longer kick the can of debt down the road to our children and grandchildren. You have a clear choice for your representation in this election. One who fights to empower you, the individual, or the incumbent who believes all wisdom flows from Washington. Together, let's make history. We share the same values on personal sacrifice and self-worth. This is why I ask for your vote. Together, I am not owned by a party. I am not owned by a lobbyist or a corporation or union leaders, but one that represents what matters most.
Thank you very much.
People like you and me.
Mr. Ruyle.
2 years ago, Americans rejected the failed policies of the Bush administration and gave our first black president a clear mandate for change, with Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress. The change we hope for has not come. In almost every arena, the Obama administration and Democrats have followed the policies of Bush, from the war in the Middle East to the issues of health care, global warming, and state torture. These 2010 midterm elections offer Americans one chance to hold the Democrats accountable. But we need to do more than that. We need a fundamental change in our nation and in the world. We need a revolution as complete and as thoroughgoing as the revolution of 1776, when the American people stood up to King George and the British Empire. The American people now need to stand up to the politicians in Washington and their cronies in Wall Street. But we also need to look more deeply at our society. And by now you shall already know my views on this matter, and I know that some of you may not agree. But I believe that the twin evils of our time are fossil fuels and capitalism. We need to abolish both and build a kind of solar socialism that is both just and sustainable. To get there, we need to change our way of thinking. We need to change our way of talking, and we need to change our way of voting. Thank you.
Thank you. Congresswoman Woolsey.
Thank you again, League of Women Voters and Ellen Thompson. What a good job you did. Thank you, Santa Rosa, for letting us be here in Channel 30 and 26 for putting us on the air. And thank you, Jim, and thank you, Jean. This has been a good conversation tonight. It's been a pleasure. A child born during my first campaign is now reaching adulthood, preparing to start college, entering the workforce, or perhaps joining the armed services. Every single decision I made over the last 18 years about jobs, about health care, about education, the environment, peace and security has been with that child's future in mind. And now I hope to return to Washington to continue my work on behalf of that young person and the next generation that she will raise. I work for you. I never, ever forget that you are my bosses, that I serve at your pleasure, and that every election is a job performance evaluation. I work diligently, passionately, and effectively on behalf of the values that you and I share. And I want to continue to work for you. That's why I'm asking for your support as I do a 10th term as your member of the House of Representatives. I hope I can count on your vote, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Woolsey. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to thank our candidates, Lynn Woolsey, Jim Ruyle, Jim Judd, and Joel Snowland for his prepared statement. I thank them not only for their participation in this forum, but also for their time and effort to serve the people of Sonoma County and the 6th District. I also thank the audience for attending this forum to become better informed. This concludes this portion of the forum. We'd like to thank the Community Media Center of North Bay for broadcasting and rebroadcasting this program. There are handouts in the back of the room with information about rebroadcast. So I encourage you to go to smartvoter.org for complete ballot information, for links to the statements by the candidates and to their own websites, and for more information on ballot measures. You're also encouraged to go to lwvsonoma.org for information on rebroadcast and other forum information. And lastly, remember the last day to register for vote is October 18th. And don't forget to vote on November 2nd. Thank you and good night.